this thing. I appreciate you coming. Give it an extra second. Hello, all. Welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh, and I have with me today a very special guest, Michael R. Fletcher. Michael, how are you doing today?
I am good. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm great. Do you prefer Mike or Michael?
I am good with either, though. If you say it right, if you snap it like Michael, I think I'm in trouble.
That's fair. So if we go with a nice, smooth Michael, then you should be okay.
Great Fletch. A lot of people call me Fletch, so
okay, that's fine too.
Any of those. All good.
That's good to know. Well, again, I appreciate you coming. I've talked to you a lot, on Twitter and things like that. I feel like we had some really good interactions, and you've helped me out with quite a few things. And I've been talking about you guys' Wizards, Warriors, and Words podcast. We got a couple that we've highlighted in particular over the last couple of episodes that will be coming out in the future. Just different things that you guys have said that I felt really, coincided what like Mark Timoney was on the other day, and him and I had quite a few conversations. So we've been trying to connect a lot with your guys's, that way, more people go out and listen. And like I said before we started recording, I feel like, particularly the other day when you were talking about, I like when you talk about a book, like no offense, like to Dirk or, Jed or Rob or anything, but
they're assholes. Tons of offense.
I just really like when you talk about a book in particular, because I feel like with Crystal's book, for instance, like you just got so excited, and I was driving on my way to work like I normally do, listening to the podcast, and I literally stopped to the side of the road, rewound it, and then looked up her name again. And then I was telling people about that book, and they're like, well, what in particular do you like about it? I said, I like that Fletcher likes it so much. And to
Some
me,
crazy guy, he likes it. So
like Adrian's, like when you said, that was one of your favorite books, I instantly, oh, hey, bud, got my co-host here, Ranger. He's been chilling with me throughout the podcast today. My friend's talk. When like, that was a book that I was like, okay, I really need to find out who this author is. And you guys had him on a couple times. And I started looking up, the first book, and I'm like, that's a brilliant book right there. And every time you talked about it in particular, I thought, okay, that's what I like about this genre, and I just feel like you and I have very similar tastes when it comes to authors that we like to read. So when you mentioned Crystal's book, I immediately put it on my list, and I'm trying to go tomorrow and order it, actually, since the bookstore closed a little bit earlier today because of something or other, because of the pandemic. But yeah, I like that about, and then when you're talking too about, a few things on there, I'm just like, okay, I just feel like your input and Dirk's are always the ones in particular that really apply to me in particular. So I'd like to ask you a couple of those types of questions today. The first one I'm really interested in, and I know you've talked about this a little bit on Wizards, Warriors, and Words, but just for our audience, what has your writing journey been like in particular?
all right. The super short version would be shit show.
I think that's all of us then.
Yeah. So, all right, I'm gonna try and keep it like fairly quick. So in 2008, while my wife was, or to-be wife was planning our wedding, I thought it would be a brilliant time to try and write a novel. And so while she was doing that, I wrote a cyberpunk book called 88, which later turned into Ghosts of Tomorrow.
Cool.
It was genius. It was the most intelligent and brilliant thing ever written by a human ever anywhere on any planet. And then nobody wanted it. It eventually, after 2 years of shopping, landed with a Canadian micropress, like a really tiny publisher. And I think it sold maybe 50 copies over a couple of years. And I'm pretty sure my mom bought most of those.
49, right?
Yeah, probably. And so, but I got super crazy lucky. I got a really good editor. So Five Rivers was the publisher. I landed an awesome editor, Barb Geiger.
Cool.
She edited 88, and I learned an insane amount from her edits. And she was not even remotely kind, but I don't think a good editor is kind.
Yeah, that's
fair. I think
fair.
a good editor is like, you know what? You're going to cry. You're just going to sob yourself to sleep tonight. Just get used to it.
Then they hand you the tissues, a couple boxes.
Yeah. I remember I once got excited when I found a page that wasn't just dripping in red. I was like, yes, I wrote one good page.
Got one.
Yeah. Anyway, so I took everything I learned from editing 88 with Barb, and I really tried to learn. I wanted to be a better writer, right? So this is my short version. It's not going to be that short.
That's
And
fine.
I used
You're my
all of
last
that.
one of the day, so feel free. I just got to
We're
go
good.
get to Shang-Chi by 6 o'clock tonight with my buddy.
Okay, we're
So.
good. So I tried to take everything I learned during that editing process. I wrote my second novel, which was Beyond Redemption. That landed me an agent. That landed a publishing deal with Harper Voyager. That flopped massively for a variety of reasons. A big part of that's got to be my own fault because I didn't know what I was doing. I was still under the impression that you have a publisher and then you're kind of done. They're going to go promote it. They're going to
Yeah.
go make this, and your job now is to write other books. It's not actually the way it works. So I went and wrote other books like The Mirror's Truth and stuff. Nothing happened with Beyond Redemption. It sort of garnered this very small cult-like psycho following of extremely twisted, insane people, which is awesome because that's who it was written for.
That's the best kind of call to have, right? Like,
Oh, fuck yeah. And then Harper Voyager, they weren't really interested in the sequel and the other stuff I'd written because Beyond Redemption, like sales wise, was flopping like massively. It did great. I got like great critical reviews, Publishers Weekly, Book List, all that crap. But that just didn't translate to sales. So there I was without a publishing deal, and I'd written a couple of books, The Mirror's Truth and Swarm and Steel. So I basically decided to hurl myself into self-publishing because it's not like I had a choice, right? Self-published those, they sold kind of surprisingly well. Kept writing more books. And the funny part is every book I've written since then has landed an agent and like good agents, like serious agents. And then nobody's been interested in it, in publishing it. So everything I have self-published has been turned down by all the publishing world. And then gone on to win sort of awards and place well in the SPFBO and all that stuff. So like all those books, like Blackstone Heart, which has done insanely well for me. Nobody wanted it. Like I had
except for fans.
He couldn't sell it.
Yeah.
Publishers just weren't interested. And yet, it's doing crazy good. Same with Smoke and Stone. So that's kind of it. I fell accidentally into self-publishing. That was never my plan. But now that I'm here, it's kind of working really well. So I'm running with it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because just that little short amount, I feel like there are so many things that you have touched on that, were different topics for you guys, on your podcast. And I think are, important things for people to hear. And I talked about querying and stuff, but, especially after listening to you guys, I'm like, okay, here's my thing, right? Like, there are so many great movies that I thought were great that critics didn't like. But they were my type of movies. And like, Vin Diesel's like The Last Witch Hunter. Is it like Gone with the Wind? No, but it was fun. It was gritty. It had all the parts I liked. And I still go back to that movie as like, it did horribly for reviews, but I know so many people that enjoy fantasy and urban fantasy and sci-fi that love that movie because of the reasons that I loved it. And I really at that time, so that's probably when I met my wife. That was the first year I met my wife. We were living in Phoenix. My old roommate and I, one of my best friends, went and saw it. And that got me interested in urban fantasy. After that, I got the Druid Chronicles by Kevin Hearn. And you guys kind of touched on it, I think a couple months ago in your guys' podcast for one of the episodes. I just think that at a certain point, you know, these companies are going to have to realize that not everybody wants Gone with the Wind as a movie, and not everybody wants this type of book. And I think in particular, I feel that, your sales, Dirk's sales, Rob's, I just think that I felt better listening to your guys' podcast because I'm like, these are books that are doing really well. I know so many people, like my buddy was just telling me the other day, was like, I tell him I talk to you guys a lot on Twitter and stuff. And he's like, oh, I love Beyond Redemption. He's like, that's my favorite book. And, to me, like, that's huge, and so many
Yeah.
people that I know have really enjoyed Beyond Redemption. So I actually moved Mirror's Truth with Beyond Redemption for my next top 5 for reading. So I'm about 5 away from Beyond Redemption. And the only reason I did that was because, that was actually a book that I was actually probably one of your 50 sales, actually, because as soon as I saw it at Barnes and Noble that I was at, I picked it up, and wherever bookstore I was at, I think it was Barnes and Noble, and I was just like, this is my kind of book. I'm a huge grimdark fan, and I like unique storylines. I'm so tired of the chosen one and this and that. And I just think that a lot of people don't take those things into consideration, and which I understand because, what do they go with? They go with Robert Jordan kind of thing, or, Brandon Sanderson or whatever, because
Yeah.
that's their business and stuff. But
There are
I just,
weirdly two different markets for books,
yes, that's a great way
and
to put
which
it.
which I never really clued into until recently. There is the book buying world, which is kind of like all of the sane humans out there,
Yep.
and they go to Barnes and Noble and their bookstores and whatever their online book buyer choices, and they you're right, like Brandon Sanderson, like all the big names, and it's great. They're reading fantasy, they're buying fantasy, amazing. And then there's this entirely separate market who read either mostly or entirely self-published stuff.
Yep.
And they really are, there's not a ton of crossover. Like if you talk to a Brandon Sanderson fan, they have never heard of me. They have
Yeah.
no
Yeah. No. Yeah.
fucking clue. And like I'm not even remotely on their radar. But in the self-publishing world, which is like this sort of like deranged little mirror world, um, there, some people have heard of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Oh, some. Yeah.
it's a completely different world. It's kind of really cool.
Yeah, and so I was talking to Mark Timoney the other day, and him and I had a conversation. We enjoyed it so much that we split it into 2 more episodes the same night, and then him and I had a private chat last week, and we're gonna do another podcast. And we were like, we have very similar interests, and the thing is though is that we really like the Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, those kinds of books, but there's nothing like that now, and I really enjoy the Conan books, but it's like nobody's really writing that type of grimdark anymore. And
Well,
I
Scott Odin, he's got to be the closest to doing
yeah,
it.
that's what we were just talking about. And I was even more happy that I bought A Gathering of Ravens a couple months ago, and I'm on Christopher Bredding, sorry, Hellborn King, which is I was going to recommend it to you because I, I think most people might not be into it for grimdark, but I definitely think it'd be up your alley. Because like I said, I feel like you and I have very similar interests when it comes to books and things like that and authors, and it's been brilliant. And I'm really excited to finish the last like 140 pages. And other than Rob's Never Die, it's got to be the best book that I've read within the last 5 years, like by far. So I got him. I actually got Clayton's River of Thieves that I started to fly through, and then I was like, I got to finish Chris's book. And it's hard because I'm reading Chris's book on my phone, and I'm reading Clayton's in paperback, and I have yours in paperback. So I got Scott coming there, and then I got Beyond Redemption after that. But I just think that yeah, I definitely agree with you. There's definitely 2 different types. And that's why I was just talking to Scott about. I said it's my kind of thing, and I just think that maybe he's got the wrong market, for
I think so. I
yeah,
think Scott would kill if he slid out of traditional and sort of went with the self-pub
yeah, yeah,
crowd. I mean, like he does okay as a traditional author, but I don't think he quite gets the sort of difference. Like as a traditional author, if you sell 10,000 copies, you're kind of you're a failure,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and you're making jack. You're probably not earning out your advance.
yeah, yeah,
As a self-published author, if you sell 10,000 copies, you probably just made 30 grand.
yeah, yeah.
It's just like, it's a world of difference. And
And
because
it's a wider reach, I think.
yeah, and he's been doing this for a while. He's got a huge following,
Yeah.
which in traditional terms, perhaps is not huge. But like, I think he'd be surprised at the number of people who will follow him into the self-publishing world,
Oh
like
yeah.
who are just, they're looking up his name.
Yeah, yeah. And my thing is like, I was talking to a buddy. He's like, "So what's the difference?" I said, and I just talked about this with Mallory Kuhn too. Like, you know, I just think that fantasy in particular, whatever genre or urban fantasy, and even sci-fi really, because we look at Star Wars and Star Trek and just the fandom for sci-fi and fantasy. And I even think now historical fiction's going that way too. And I think the brothers Gwyn, Edward and William are a testament to that. I think those three genres are, like I will tell you about a book instantly. Clayton gave me a bunch of really good ones that, I'm definitely going to order a couple this week. I'm going to find even more of them at the library. We talk, and we rave about books, and I had people just rave to me about Beyond Redemption. So I was like, okay, I'm like, I'll just move it up. I was really interested. That's why I picked it up instantly. I went that day and I was looking around, and again, these two different communities, and I thought, I just got done reading somebody else's work that was very unique, and I went and picked up this and that book, and I set it down. And as soon as I picked up Beyond Redemption and read the blurb on the back, I was like, yep, this is coming home with me. And I just think that, people really need to consider that when writing too. And I am not trying to write towards a Brandon Sanderson audience. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not. I feel like I am trying to write a similar audience to other authors, and I have some grimdark stuff that I feel would be similar to yours. And, character development, I think I loved how you were talking about it with Crystal's books, how with her book where you said that you could literally take her characters or switch them around and it'd be a completely different story. And I think that's what I look for more in a book is characters like Uhtred Bedinburg, right? Like especially, you know, the TV show. Like I feel like I would take that character and put him in any book, and I would watch or read it. I love that character. I don't, what I mean, I don't care. You can put him in a space opera or at the bottom of the ocean. Like I just don't care. Like I would watch that character or read about him anywhere. And I just think that, some people come for the story, like you guys were talking a little while back, plot versus characters. And I really think that the communities come down to, really for me, and that's what Mallory and I are talking about, is it characters or is it plot? And I actually think that people who enjoy indie, books or, your style of writing, I think come more for the characters than the plot. And I think other people come for the plot that want traditional. That's at least what the conversations I've been having with people have seemed like. So I kind of think it's kind of going that route in terms of marketing too.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
there's always been that spread, even in traditional publishing.
yep.
I mean, if you look back a little farther at like more of the science fiction side, but I mean, there's always been. I mean, for me, I kind of divide books into there are three categories. There's a plot book, which is it's about the story.
Yep.
Like kind of the characters are somewhat interchangeable, but it's like get the ring to the mountain, throw it in the fire.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the plot's the main character rather than the main characters.
Yeah, there's the idea books, and that's more science fiction, where it's some crazy person has figured out like, oh, what if I spin quantum entanglement like this, or Project Hail Mary,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
The Martian, um, where like that's an idea book. The writer had an idea, and he was like, okay, here's the character I need to fit this idea, ran with it. Awesome, fucking love those books. So I love plot books, I love idea books, and I love character books. And Crystal stuff, Legacy of the Brightwash, pure character. If you put a different character in the same story, the story would change. Like it could not be the same story
Yeah, yeah.
with different characters.
Hmm. And see, yeah, like I said, like that when you were talking about it the other day on your guys's season 2, 37th episode, I believe, I instantly was like, okay, that for me brought it way up on my, to be bought list and to be read because I've seen people talk about it a lot, but nobody's put it in terms that has advertised character to me. So when you said it, I was like, okay, I'm like, this is definitely one that, has moved up there. And yeah, I started thinking about it more the last couple of days since listening. I think I listened to the episode on Thursday, and it just to me seems like I'm more of a character because like Conan, right? I will read any Conan book. Doesn't matter the author. It doesn't matter if it's a short story, Dark Horse, Marvel comic, whatever. Like I will read it. Don't care who the artist is, and you could again put him in any plot anywhere, and I would read it. because it's still the same character.
Yeah.
And that definitely affected me the other day when, because I had brought that episode and what you had said to Mark, and that really sparked an interest for both of us when talking about character development and things like that. And we were talking about his book, Blood of the Spear, and he said, I really feel like that's how people will feel with my book, is you just take them, even rearrange them from chapter to chapter, because he's got the two brothers, and they're both very different, kind of like Cameron and Raceland from Dragonlance, the twins. And I thought, the more I thought about it, I'm like, okay, I'm like, well, that helped me now with my draft too, because I'm thinking, well, I'm so worried about the plot, and I was like, well, I care more about characters, so I'm like, no wonder I'm having trouble writing plot, or whatever, because that's not what I want to read. So why am I writing there, that way? So it definitely helped me out quite a bit. But that kind of leads me to the next question I've really been wanting to ask for a while. Where do you get these ideas from? Because, uh, you know, like Beyond Redemption, like, and those of you guys that don't know, I'm gonna put your books in the description for the links. So make sure you check out the blurb for Beyond Redemption. Do you want to just kind of give us like a quick overview? I know it's kind of hard because it's a detailed topic, but just
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, the ideas, they always come from somewhere weirdly unrelated. I arrive by everything sort of obliquely.
okay.
So Beyond Redemption, the entire concept of all right, let's back up a little bit. Faith and belief defining reality, that's not new. Like, obviously I didn't, I'm not the first
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but that was in sort of, I'd read books, C.S. Friedman,
Oh, yeah.
her stuff, and I'm gapping on the name, brilliant series. So her stuff kind of, I think, was like a spark in the background for me.
Gotcha.
Weirdly, I was recording a rock band. I used to be an audio engineer.
Yeah, yeah.
A rock band in Toronto called Dirty Penny. They had a song about the interaction between the conquistador Francesco Pizarro and the Incan emperor
Oh, that's
Atahualpa.
cool.
And in the song, they spun the meeting, the interaction, as sort of like this conflict of worldviews. And that planted this idea where, like, what if a perception defined reality, and you have, here's this one group of people who see reality one way, and now they meet this other group of people who see reality differently, and what if they're both right? Their worldviews do define reality, and so you get this sort of like clash of realities. And then really just spun out of control from there. That sort of led me to thinking like, okay, so if your beliefs define reality, who is strong? Who is like powerful? And it occurred to me that the people who are capable of believing absolutely insane shit, people who are just fucking broken, who can believe really messed up things, they become the really powerful ones. And so that led to this sort of like insanity-based magic system.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I know you talked about it, like I said, on your guys' podcast, and you'll know a little bit more when you read that blurb. But when I read it, I was just like, this is really cool. And when you talked about it a lot, this is going to be, like I've been telling people, is more of like a journeyman's podcast, rather than a beginner's. And I want to do that because there's people like me who are stuck on an idea, or maybe aren't sure where to get new ideas. I have way too many. I have a whole book of them. I just need to get crap done and
Honestly,
get going.
the hardest part isn't coming up with ideas. The hardest part is going through your ideas and figuring out which one to chase.
Yeah, yeah.
For me, like, all right, I never write an idea down.
Okay.
Good, because my litmus test for ideas is, if I forget it, wasn't that good. But the idea that bugs me for weeks and weeks and weeks, the idea that doesn't leave me alone, that's the
Yeah.
one that becomes a book. And so,
Okay.
like, because I'm not worried about, like, oh, what if I run out of ideas? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't write any of them down. Any idea that I forgot, and there are fucking tons of them, it's gone. But Beyond Redemption, Ghosts of Tomorrow,
Okay.
Black Stoneheart, all of those are the ideas that literally pestered me every day for weeks and
Yeah.
weeks. And that's the one. That's the one you got to write. So if you're wondering which idea you should write, stop worrying about it, put away the book, and kind of wait to see which one bugs you. The one that's the most annoying, that's the one you got to write.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. I mean, I would say that I do it more in a convoluted way, because so basically like the 4 books that I've been working on consistently are the ones that have stuck with me and kept bugging me, and basically were like poking me on the shoulder, like, hey, have you written us yet? Hey, have you finished yet? And so I think that is great advice personally, because I feel like that's how it's been for me. Like I write them down, but then I just kind of don't go back. But the ones, that really stick with me, I've been writing. Yeah, that's a good one. I did want to ask you, just personally, like I said, I'm on draft 2, and I know you've talked a little bit about this here and there. So I'm on draft 2 of book 1, right? And I know a lot of people that I talked to a lot of people in the writing community, and a lot of people are there, and that's why I wanted to do this podcast, is to help people out like me. So I'm in this situation where I had a great idea and I wasn't prepared for it, and I wrote it really horribly. And I'm thinking that since I'm stuck trying to fix it, I'm thinking about just scrapping it, saving it for later when I'm more experienced, and just writing a whole, now that I'm, used to the process, just writing something new. And I got this other idea that's bugging me. It's a Griffin Rider series, but it is not contemporary, and it's grimdark, and it is as unique as you can get with Griffin Riders, I think. And it has really good characters, more importantly. What would you do if you were me? Would you
All right.
stop?
I think chasing new ideas, I totally get that. Like
Yeah.
I always want to do that because there's always like a shiny new idea. And the
Shiny
idea,
penny, yeah.
whatever idea you're not writing is way more interesting than the one you're writing. However, the one thing you have to do if you want to be a writer is finish shit.
Exactly, yeah.
So my advice would be set aside the shiny new project that you want to work on, and fix the one that you've already written. The brilliant thing is you've written it, it's done.
Yeah.
So now what you can do is read it through, figure out the holes, do a read through where you don't make any changes, you just drop comments to yourself. Figure out the holes, figure out like how the end works, how you got there. You're going to need to go back. You're going to layer in like foreshadowing and stuff and sort of build to it better. Once you've got the ending, though, you can make the ending make sense sort of after the fact. And honestly, I would, instead of trying to do like finish everything in one pass, think of it as you're going to do like 7 or 8 passes of editing. Pass number 1 is going to be fleshing out scenes, because there's probably going to be scenes where you kind of like you did little shortcuts and you didn't take the time to really put it into the reader's head. Flesh those out, make them real. That's 1 pass. You're not allowed to do anything else on that pass. Ignore everything else. If you see something egregious, make a note. Next pass is going to be, say, nailing character's voice. And that's all you're doing for that pass, is like tweaking phrasing, tightening your dialogue. And that's something else we can talk about another time. And so figure out your 7 or 8 things that you need to get done, and just do separate passes. It means you're going to read that book like a fucking ton of times. If you don't hate your book by the time you're done, you haven't really done it right.
Oh, cool. I'm already there. All right.
Yeah. But seriously, it's focus. Focus on one goal for each pass. Nail that. When you've been through the whole thing, then you get to go back and start again on your next pass. But do the work, finish the book, fix it.
I think that's fabulous advice.
If you toss that in the trunk now and write another idea,
but then you just have to do the work later.
This idea, but you haven't really put in the work on the last idea.
Yeah.
And it's it's finishing that first idea that's going to teach you what you need to know to make the next idea better.
I'm glad you said that, because that's what like I've been talking to a few people about, just like me and Mark talked about on Friday, and um, he was like, "Well, I don't want to tell you what to do." I'm like, "But," I was like, "You wrote a book." I was like, "You're ahead," and we talked about, like, I don't know if it was our conversation 2 weeks ago or last Friday, but like how like he's on one mountain and I'm on the other, but like I'm here at the bottom, but then he's on the other mountain at the bottom, looking up at somebody else, and it's like a range of mountains. And I was just like, "Oh, that's such a good way to put it," and it made me feel a lot better. But I like how you put that though. That I guess I was just overwhelmed the last couple of weeks. Like, okay, here it is printed, and I know there's mistakes. I know there's plenty of mistakes. Just with what I was trying to do, let alone what I have to do. So I like how you said that, going through and just doing one thing at a time, because I feel like I'm an analytical thinker, and I think that that helps me far more than, and that's how I separate my life. I'm going to do this today, this tomorrow, and I think that's great advice. I feel
Break
like,
it down the same way. What happens too often is writers, they want to finish their book
yeah,
so
yeah,
that they move on to the next thing. I totally get that. And so they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to do an editing pass wherein I fix everything. It just doesn't work that way. I
yeah,
mean, maybe for some people who are just way smarter than we are. That's
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
But for the rest of us, focus on what you're going to do that pass. And like sometimes, like I will do one pass where it's basically word murder.
mm,
So what I'm doing is I'm looking for was that had, and I do passes where I just search for these kind of weak ass words, which are killing my prose.
yeah,
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 because my first draft is like brain barf.
yeah, yeah,
And so like there'll be a pass, and usually the tightening pass where I'm doing that kind of stuff, that's right at the very end, because the that's not the important part.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Yeah, I definitely feel better about that. Mallory and I were talking about that. I think she said she wrote 6 books, and then her sixth book was actually Among Thieves, which is her first debut out now. And I think she said she did 26 um, different drafts of that book in itself. So I was just like, all right, here we go, number 2. But that's what I was talking to her, because like Brandon Sanderson with his online lectures before the pandemic hit was awesome for BYU. And he had mentioned how he wrote 13 books. This was what I was afraid of. He wrote 13. First of all, I wanted to be able to finish something, which now I did. But then he was talking about how he wrote like 10 to 13 novels, which one was Way of Kings, Elantris, and Warbreaker. I loved Warbreaker. And he said that nobody wanted them because he had not gone back and edited them, and then he just decided, I'm going to write another book or go for the shiny penny. And then he just kept going back, and then nobody wanted anything because he didn't actually go back. And like I said, one of those was Way of Kings. Especially, I think he put two the ideas together and did the first book for Way of Kings. So that's where I was afraid of, with falling into what I call the Sanderson trap. And I feel like have gotten too involved over the years with the shiny penny, and I get frustrated with the outlining process or whatever, and then I just move on to the next thing, and then I've never finished anything. And people kept
Yeah.
asking me this and that, and I'm like, well, I had to finish something, and then now they're like, well, you wrote it. I'm like, yeah, but it's also not done. And just knowing what I know now about outlining, it's just like I feel like I didn't know
Your
anything
next
about outlining, and I still
next
don't.
book
But
will be better.
yeah,
Next book will be better, but you got to finish this one first.
yeah,
That's that would be my advice. Finish this one, nail it, take your
yeah.
time, do it right.
No, I think that's great advice. Before we wrap up here, because I know Spotify is weird about the size of podcasts and things, which is kind of frustrating. But I just want to invite you back, Mike. I'd love to have you back any other time. Talk about whatever. We were talking about dialogue and stuff, and I have so many questions for you that we can't get in even like a whole 24 hours. So I'd love to have you back in the future.
Yeah,
It'd be great. I see, I had Clayton on the other day, so he's episode 2. So you're going to be a little ahead, I think now, episode 12 or something like that. I'll give you a calendar date for that. What books are you currently promoting right now? I see a couple behind you.
Yeah, I mean, same old, same old. I'm not even sure how many I have out right now. So technically, I guess I'm promoting all of them. But Clayton and I, we wrote Norilska Groans there. That has made it into the finals of the SPFBO.
Oh, I
Self-published.
must have missed that. Congrats. That's awesome.
Yep, super cool. So
Oh,
that's
cool.
great. Blackstone Heart, just buy my fucking books.
Yeah, I bought that one. I'm excited to get to that one after Beyond Redemption and Mirror's Truth. I just love that Mirror's Truth cover, and I love the blurb. I saw it and I was like, I have to have this book. Yeah, but when I got Blackstone Heart, I thought it looks so cool online, but man, oh man, I went and took out one of my, because I have a few shelves where it's like, books that I really love to look at and just enjoy the covers and just know they're there. They just make me feel good. And that was one of them I put right there because it just looks so much better in person. And to me, it's like it's so fantasy, like it's not even funny. And if you guys have not read the blurb for Blackstone Heart, just go do it. And I'm definitely gonna have you back, and we'll definitely talk more in depth about that process because I know you've talked a little bit about it, and I'd love to kind of pick your brain a little bit more on that one. But I'll be putting that one as well in the descriptions and any other things, or places you want people to go and see right away. Norska Groans. Did I say it right this time? Me and Clayton were practicing.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
You know what? I never stress about pronunciation. Everyone has their own like how they pronounce my characters' names. I don't
Yeah,
care.
yeah.
It's all good.
Well, I have to say, and I talked to Clayton about this, I really enjoyed the first cover. Not that the second one is very provocative in a different way. I taught design for a long time, and I was actually going to be either a graphic designer or an illustrator originally, and I love it. I love it. But there's just something about the cover behind you. And I had talked to Clayton about getting the original cover. I just really, because that's the hardcover one, right? Is the
This
original?
is actually first draft paperback.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Although the hardcovers also have that art now.
Oh, cool.
But
Yeah, I
the
just,
paperbacks, I think I've got two or three of these left.
oh, cool.
And then the hardcovers will be that cover, paperbacks will be the new one.
Oh, cool. I'll probably get both just because I like both covers a lot. But there was something about that cover, and when you guys were talking about it on your podcast, I thought that just matches to me the mood, the tone, and everything, and just the feel of that story. So we'll definitely be putting that link in there as well for you guys. Please make sure you go and check out, Clayton and Mike's book. Hopefully, maybe we can have you back getting your perspective. I talked to Clayton about maybe having you both on at some point so
Yeah.
we can get your perspective. And I know he had different things to say about co-authoring with you. Nothing bad, but just different things that you guys didn't ask. And it was seeing that episode with you guys and listening to it. I've listened to it a couple of times. It was just very interesting. And he talked about how there were different things that came up after the fact that he didn't really consider when he was on your guys' podcast the first time. So I'd love to get you guys on at some point and kind of get your take there, just the two of you, and kind of go through that process a little bit more in depth. I think that would be really helpful for people. Obviously, like I said, this is a journeyman podcast, so I'm sure that will be a higher level thing for some people, but I just feel that him and I broke it down so much in a simple manner that there were just a lot of great things that came out. And you had a lot of great things today. That's one reason why I listened to you on your guys' podcast. So I'd love to get you guys together because I know that that'd be pure podcast magic. So I feel like that'd be a really good future one. So
Yeah, dude, anytime.
perfect. All right, Mike. Well, I'm gonna stop us here just for that time limit. Again, love to have you back in the future. I really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, if there's anything you want to promote, just let me know. If you want any, links or anything like that, I'll make sure people get there. We'll put it in the YouTube description. Just so you guys know, by now the Spotify will have been fixed today in present time. We're still having a little bit of trouble getting those links on there, but I will get those up. So by the time you listen to this, you'll actually be able to listen to me and Mike on Spotify. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. Again, Mike, thanks for coming. You guys can find this video on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, like I said, the audio will now be on Spotify by the time you listen to this. If you guys want to reach me, I'm at Scholars of Uma, that's UMA at gmail.com. Let me know if you guys want to see anybody else on future podcasts or you really like somebody like Mike, for instance, and want them to come back. We'll make sure we get them back. And make sure if you have any questions about, you know, anything you that we talked about, or, you know, anything you want me to ask future guests, please let me know. Feel free to send me any videos and pictures that are fantasy and sci-fi related. I'll make sure I get those up on the websites and everything. Mike, again, thank you so much for coming. I look forward to actually hearing your guys' podcast this upcoming week. And I will talk to you on Twitter, I'm sure. And I hope you have a good rest of your Sunday, my friend.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Thanks
Bye,
for
Mike. Yep, thank you. I'll talk to you later.